Well, wherever you're joining us from, welcome to the Thriving Man Day 1 of the Summit. We're excited to have you here. I want to say welcome and happy 2023. What a great time to tune in and connect so that you can set yourselves up for a very successful year ahead. I can't see anybody's faces, so I don't know if there's new faces or familiar faces. Please feel free to turn on your video, even if you're driving.
Oh, there it is.
Hello, there's a human. Nice to see you. Oh, there's some more. I love it. Thank you. That helps us engage a little bit more. It changes the energy. Oh, look at all those fabulous smiles. Welcome, welcome. I also want to start by saying thank you guys. Thank you for taking a step in the direction for yourselves and by extension, your families, your communities, your place of work. We know that if we grow and expand and learn and heal, we share and we become a beacon for others. So thank you for being part of that work. One of the things that Matt, maybe what I'll get you to do is put up the slide so these lovely folks can look at something other than our mugs while we're talking. What excites me most about this summit and all you guys who have registered, whether you're catching the video afterwards or you're here live with us, is that for over the past 20 years, I've been working in public health and corporate wellness as a health promotion specialist and a registered kinesiologist. And I'm finally starting to see shifts in the narrative about men and what it means to be healthy, whole, and well in the 21st century. This is exciting for me, and I know for many of my clients in my private practice, it can be scary and exhilarating. And for most men, it's scary because a lot of you are leading the way in this self-development, expansion, self-improvement realm. And it's not like you've had a whole lot of mentors and role models to follow in their footsteps. So in a lot of ways, you guys have it somewhat more difficult than the generations who are going to follow you. So take a moment to appreciate what that means for you and all the generations to come. And I'm going to turn it over to Matt to give himself an introduction.
Thanks, Jen. Welcome, men. Thank you for joining us tonight. This is a third of three beautiful two beautiful interactions that we had earlier today. And what I love about this is I don't recognize any of the faces on here. And I love that there's new people that are engaging this community and engaging, choosing, as Jen started, to allude to there, making choices to shift your creation and your way of being. A little bit about me is I was a Toronto police officer for 13 years. I stepped away from that because I was in a very stuck space in that sphere. It held me. It didn't hold me. I was experiencing, that stuck feeling because I was in a place that I didn't belong in. I was feeling contrast every day going in, feeling in my body that this was a toxic environment. It was a toxic way of, creating my life, and it was perpetuating in a already self-destructive way that I had already chosen to create. And knowing that I couldn't heal and be well in that community, I had to choose a shift for myself. I had to choose to step away from it, because if I was going to be well, I needed to disengage something that I felt was toxic for me. Not that that's by any means the space that first responder, police, fire, whatever community is for others. For me, that's how I felt internally, and my body was telling me that you had to get out, and that shift needed to be happening. What transpired was a continued call for service. So I felt that call to still support, guide, and mentor men. I love working with men from those communities because there's a lot happening there, man. A lot of energy bonding, a lot of things going on, and the cultures that make them very tough to make decisions for self. So that's how I landed in the realm of coaching and meeting the other three amazing coaches who were part of this collective to bring this energy and share it with other humans. So here we are.
Thanks, Matt. Can you go ahead and advance our slides for the night, please? All right, so I'm big in practicing what I preach. So whenever I transition into something new, a new task, a new location, a new engagement, I like to ground myself with 3 deep breaths. So I'm going to invite you guys to do that with me tonight. Transition from work, from home, from family, from commuting into this moment. And if you're still commuting, take the 3 deep breaths and ground yourself into this new engagement. In your nose, out your mouth, nice, slow, nice, deep, big breaths, sinking into your body, sinking into your sits bones, and really setting an intention for tonight, for this day of the summit, and then maybe for the week of the summit, joining us tomorrow and Thursday, whether that's to learn, to engage, to connect, to explore something new. Set that intention. For Matt and I tonight, the intention is to set the context for our summit this week and share with you a few pieces of information that we feel will help set you up to move in the direction of more thriving. And we want to do that by starting a conversation with each of you and more broadly within the SFE community and the communities you're part of. And we wanted to share with open-minded men what we've been seeing historically in our practices for many years. One being that men tend to operate for prolonged periods of time in survival mode. Survival mode is a suboptimal mode and is very taxing. We also notice that there's lots of men out there seeking more. They want more from their lives. They want more for those they love. And often they don't know exactly where to connect to do that. So we want to help bridge that gap. And the other intention we have is to plant a seed through language and awareness about the tools and practices you can implement right away, getting off this call, getting off of tomorrow's call and Thursday's call, to help you shift into greater ease, going from survival mode to creation mode, to create that overarching sense of thriving across your lifespan. Matt, if you could advance the slide, that would be great. Awesome. So this all started a few years ago when Kayla and I were introduced through a coaching community. We both loved being of service. We both love helping people. So we put our heads together and we thought, okay, where do we put our energies, effort, and time and resources? And after lots of research, interviews, discussions, some laughs, some tears, we realized that many people are failing to thrive across their lifespan. So this is, keep in mind, we talked to men in the corporate space, the first responder space, we talked with women, we talked with wives, husbands, fathers, community members. We really wanted a broad scope. We talked to counselors, psychologists, and we really saw this theme of failing to thrive across a lifespan. And when we looked into it a little bit further, we saw that the statistics for men were particularly alarming. So that's where we decided to put our efforts, and we onboarded Matt and Nick as part of our coaching collective at the Thriving Man Academy to really design courses, programs, and resources directed at men who are wanting to expand and grow out of that survival mode. Survival mode, like I said, is this suboptimal state of being. It has its utility, of course, when we're in danger, it keeps us alive. When we're struggling, it keeps us going. However, because it's characterized by the physiological and emotional upregulation or dysregulation, we're not really creating in this state. We're merely existing and surviving. And that's not what life's about. It has its utility, it's functional, but we want to move beyond that. And what happens is we fail to thrive when we spend too much time in survival mode, this state of overwhelm, underwhelm, frustration, wanting, struggling. And we want to help men shift from survival mode into creation mode. Now, creation mode is this beautiful space where we tend to feel more aligned, where we have awareness, where we feel like we have choice and creativity, we have attention and energy to build and to flow and connect. If we can shift between survival mode and creation mode with ease, what happens is we get this sense of thriving across our lifespan. So again, survival mode has its function. Creation mode is a way of being. To move from ease between the two means we're thriving. So really quickly in the chat box, I want you guys to let us know how you know you're in survival mode. what happens for you? What does it feel like in your body? What kind of actions, behaviors do you have when you're in survival mode? Please take a moment, go ahead and share in the chat box.
Where's the chat box? Did I unmute?
Oh, we can hear you there, Robert. No problem. That's okay.
I'm trying to figure out this computer too. So I was like, did I hit the right button? Okay.
You're all good, friend. Yeah. So Ryan, keys, overthinking, spinning, hamster wheel, stress, fog, lack of clarity, increased heart rate. So you guys you're familiar with survival mode for sure. I want to ask you guys, how do you know when you're in creation mode? You know survival mode. What's creation mode like for you guys? How do you know when you're in that?
With me, it's when I'm baking in the kitchen. Like I will not bake if I'm stressed or fatigued, like because that energy goes into your food. So when I'm in the zone, it's like baking and cheesecakes galore.
I love it. I love it. So you actually have a practice to celebrate creation mode, flow state, happiness, accomplishment, focused. Absolutely. Now, I want to ask, you know survival mode, you know creation mode. Who here is currently experiencing a sense of thriving? Just a yes or no in the chat box, please. We've got a yes, we've got some no's and nopes. Thank you guys for sharing that. It takes a tremendous amount of courage to identify where you're currently at. And that's important because with awareness comes the mother of creation and choice. Because now, okay, I'm not thriving. I have a choice. I can keep going or I can do something, and the options become endless. So I'm going to turn it over to Matt, and he's going to tell us a little bit more about creation mode, getting into creation mode, and then we'll circle back to thriving. Thanks for sharing, Matt.
Thanks, Jen, and thank you, men, for sharing. Yeah, appreciate the honesty, and we want to be in a healthy state of being, and being able. First step is that awareness that you either are or are not, and what shift needs to take place. And sharing that is a good way of indicating, because when you say something out loud, connect with community, whether it's here or in another space, sometimes saying the thing out loud creates a next level of awareness of what may need to be shifted or, choices that need to change. So many of you, hit the nail on the head, so to say, when you were describing what creation mode felt like for you. It is that state of ease, more harmonious balance in your day-to-day movement. You start to make more intentional choice. You're more relaxed, less reactive. You're able to give yourself space to choose authentically, not impulsively. You're able to be more intentional, create a bigger container and touch the edges a little bit more, not, living in such a tight, narrow-minded way of being. You find yourself expanding into more flow and more harmonious existence. So with that, I think what the first thing that most people have to do to identify what mode they're in is to do that internal audit. Your body tells you a lot of things. So when you are feeling that you are in survival mode, going into self, doing a check-in, looking at the four primary things that we need as human beings. Am I hydrating enough? Am I sleeping enough? Am I providing my body with nutritious food, that life force energy that we require? And am I moving? Am I moving around? Am I activating exercise or walking, hiking, whatever it may be? Because when any of those things are lacking, you're going to struggle to regulate. You know, those things are those are the main principles of regulation, is being hydrated, filling the body with nutritious vitamins and food, and sleeping and activating movement. So starting there, and if any of those are off, starting with how you can make those micro moves into activating more in one of those channels or more. Nick, who's not with us tonight, he was on the 2 previous calls, is going to speak at more length in the holistic well-being tomorrow. So if you do have that time, as Jen said, to step into one of these tomorrow, you'll get a little bit more of an elaborate nugget on that stuff. For today, you know, going into creation mode, we have to look into things like the inner narratives that we've been told and have been directed our whole lives of how to navigate our way of being. What we don't realize is that our whole lives we've been told what we should do and what we have to do. And within that, we've come to a place where we get stuck on this very linear line of being, because we were told for, you know, 70% of our life, 80% of our life, you know, that we have to do things a certain way. And, you know, the story, like the story that we tell ourselves matters. And if we can shift the narratives within those stories to be able to choose differently, that we don't have to do something, we can choose to do something. It doesn't mean that we're not going to continue to do the thing that we are choosing to do, but at least make it your choice, not because you were told to or have to or should, which is where language starts to step in. You know, I choose this, I can do this because I want to do this, not I have to go to work or I should take the kids to the park. Do you want to do that thing? So if you're always going with the language of shoulds, have tos, and, you know, I can't, is you're going to get stuck in those contrasting energies that will show up in your body. So starting to shift your language, shift the narratives so we can change the stories and rewire those neural pathways that were so ingrained in us most of our lives. And within that, as you start to create those new pathways, those new choosing from within rather than receiving externally, you start to build that inner winner within yourself. You know, you start to realize, hey, I am choosing my way of being. I am making choices, whether it's to leave the job or choosing relationships, choosing friendships, activating or deactivating a relationship with a family member. You know, I don't have to actually do anything. I can choose to do what is best for me. Yes, there's the legal parameters of doing things within the boundaries of law and things of that nature that we try to keep ourselves to in society, but we get to choose from within. And then you build that inner winner. And one of the amazing things to keep yourself in that creative state is to continue to, I just realized I wasn't moving the slides, I apologize, is to continue to activate some of those tools that keep you grounded and keep you out of that upregulated state. You know, you have, as Jen activated today before, some deep breaths, you know, some meditation, doing some work that starts from the inside out to reground yourself when you find yourself in that stress response, you know, that brain fog, or you know, the multitude of different responses we have when we're in an upregulated state. We're going to continuously be exposed to external factors that will influence our way of being, but it's up to us to decide what we're going to attach to, what we're going to let sit, and what we want to move through in an energetic way. And breathwork, meditation, touching nature, going for a hike, things of that nature are beautiful ways to give yourself that space to pause, downregulate, and then you're not acting out of a reactive state or impulsive state or that high stress state. And what I believe to be one of the most essential and all important pieces is that connection to community. You guys are here today because you believe in connection, you believe in activating community, you believe that the collective is stronger than, you know, the isolation of yourself. You know, you can create within self, but the more you realize that there's people out there doing it, activating the same things that you want in an energetic way, you know, you realize you're not alone. You realize that this is a world of energetic mingling that is ours to choose to mingle with or not. And with that, Jen will take back over.
Oh, the power is back to me. Can you change the slide for me, Matt? You still have some of the power. All right, guys. So of course, in a summit like this, these are quick, short, sharp bits of information meant to get you stimulated, considering, contemplating, reflecting on your own lives. Obviously, you can connect with us further at any point, whether it's through the SFE community, whether it's through a direct call. We're going to share a link in just a moment with you guys. You can reach out and connect with us. The idea is to plant those seeds, give you some information today, tomorrow, and Thursday to build on. So I covered survival mode, creation mode, and it's the ease in which we get to, and we create practices and routines to move with more ease between the two states, because it's life. We're going to find ourselves in survival mode, and we can create creation mode. It's to navigate those with more ease, more intentionality, more resources, more support, so that we get that overarching sense of thriving. Now, really quickly, in the chat box, we talked about how you know you're in survival state, how you know you're in creation mode, and you also were very generous and courageous and shared that you're not, most of you are not currently in thriving mode. I'm just wondering if you guys could unmute yourselves, and if we had a brave soul or two share, why is thriving important in your words?
I could start. Can you guys hear me?
Great. Yeah.
Well, for me, to thrive is really important, because if you're not going forward, you're kind of falling behind, right? I know that puts a lot of pressure on people, but it feels like I always have to keep up and stay ahead. Yeah.
And why is that movement and momentum forward, or that sense of getting somewhere or expanding, so important for us as humans? Why do you think that is?
Well, to be honest, it's because as human beings have the way I see it, this is kind of my perspective. Human beings we're constantly the reason why we had to thrive was because the environment was constantly trying to kill us, right? Whether it's the weather, whether it's other animals, whether it's other people, we have to figure out new and innovative ways to survive and thrive. And since as human beings, we can only do so much to ourselves physically to adapt the environment, even though, we've, through evolution and all that stuff, we figured out what traits to kind of look out for. We realized that we could actually manipulate the environment to our benefit. So that's why we have houses. That's why we have, food delivery. That's why we have farms, right?
Yeah, and we were gifted with a prefrontal cortex that gives us the ability to expand and therefore thrive. So thriving, flourishing, growing, expanding, learning, evolving is all part of the gift of being a human. Does anybody else have any ideas or want to share why it's important to thrive?
It's important to thrive because you can't live in the survival state much longer. With the way technology, everything's expanding so fast, the old ways do not work. Like, we have to up our own levels and step up.
Yeah, absolutely. Because that comes back to, if we boil that down to, we have one life to live. We are the authors and architects of that human experience while we're here. So it's up to us, it's this radical responsibility to move that, to experience it in some way that feels aligned for ourselves. So we do, this is the nugget in a nutshell. Survival, creation, thriving. It's that launching point. We do dive into it a lot further and more depth in a course that we're starting in February. It's exclusive for men, 12 weeks. We really dive into the patterns, the language, the principles, the habits of shifting between survival mode, because like Robert said, we will find ourselves there. Yet we also have this gift and responsibility to shift into creation mode to have a fulfilling life so that we have that overarching sense of thriving. So we really get into the nuts and bolts and nitty gritty of how do you actually craft and cultivate thriving in a practical way for you as an individual. So we do have that course. We also have, we're going to open the floor up to questions, comments, so you have access to 3 of the 4 coaches tonight, Matt, Kayla, myself. Let's open it up. Let's have some questions. Let's have some conversation and dialogue about survival, creation, and thriving to see where we can get to tonight for you guys as individuals. Who would like to go ahead and kick us off?
I would. I just want to say something. I just want to say something really quick in regards to something. Wait, pardon me. Is it Way? Am I pronouncing it correctly?
Yep, it's Way.
So just in regards to that, shift from survival to the thriving and having to fight the fight, I do believe, and this is a a little nugget around that language tech and shifting the way you believe in the way of saying things. I like to approach language in respect to things such as that as you step into survival mode, yes, there's an ebb and flow, but I don't believe it's a step backwards. Every moment has a opportunity to learn and understand something better, even if it feels like a roadblock that has come up, or it feels like that backward motion. I believe everything that is experienced is part of forward momentum, even though it may appear as a roadblock or feel like a heavy, feel all those feelings that rise inside you. But just shifting that language from, it's taking a step backwards, it can be fundamental in moving through it, because it is a moment to learn. It is a moment to take an opportunity, look at it and say, yes, it's heavy. This is difficult. I don't like it. But instead of it being a step backwards, take that learning opportunity and still consider it part of that forward momentum in your way of being.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
All right, gentlemen, questions, comments. Let's help you make this a little bit more relative to you. Share, go ahead, ask us a question.
I guess I'll start. So I was kind of reading through the description of SFE, and I have a pretty keen interest in things like what special forces guys usually have to go through, right? And I guess my thing is, like, what are things we have to do to psychologically prepare ourselves? Because I feel like this is going to be essentially, it's not, I mean, obviously this is going to be stuff that's like, it's going to be like Hell Week, essentially, or like kind of like Buds from what I've gathered. So how do we prepare for it? That's the first question. Second question is, how do we, if I make it through, it's a big if, right? How do I readjust back into like society? Because this is all very countercultural stuff, right? Like we discourage this kind of, like, unfortunately as a society, I feel like as a guy, this stuff is discouraged. We're not really encouraged to go and do hard things. How do I reintegrate with society and be able to interact with people who don't have the same beliefs as I do?
Excellent questions.
Yeah, kind of long-winded, I know.
No, that's okay. If I'm hearing you correctly, the first part of the question was, how do you prep? How do you prepare mentally? So that's doing the language technologies, shifting from conflict-centric language to architect language. It's doing the narrative work. It's getting clear in your stories. It's taming that inner critic. It's us who get in our own way 99% of the time. How do you prepare for that? You disarm it. And you have to do that in connection with somebody else. You have to have this place where you can see the story, share the story, and feel it differently, and have somebody more distant or more objective or removed from the situation help you literally rewrite the stories that block you from doing the things you want to do. So it takes prep, it takes time, it takes connection, it takes support, and it works. Narrative, story work, inner critic work is game changing. I've been in the behavior change, organizational change management game for over 20 years. Language tech was the game changer. It helps people, and it's almost instantaneous. When you have that click and shift in the reframe of a story, it shifts your narrative, it shifts your identity, and you become more of yourself. You get out of your own way. It's like you broke through your limiting bubbles. So that's some ways to prep. The physiological stuff that Nick is going to talk about tomorrow, have regular practices and routines. So he'll dive into that. Kayla on day 3 with Matt are going to dive into a little bit more about that language, patterning, and some quick shifts that you can do to get you started right away. So tune in tomorrow and Thursday for that. And then as for that reintegration piece that you were talking about, this is where rituals really come into practice and play and can be beneficial. So I know police officers, for example, a female police officer, when she's at work, her hair is always in a ponytail. When she gets home, before she opens the door, her ritual is taking her ponytail out, shuffling her hair, taking 3 deep breaths, and walking through the door. She is no longer a police officer at home. She is a mom, she's a wife, she's, the PTA lead. So it's mentally shifting who you are. So you go to your job and you're this person. So you might have a ritual when you go to the base, when you go to training, that turns you into that part of your identity. And then when you're coming back, you do the reverse. Lots of priming, language, psychology priming will be very helpful for that. And having a really good tribe of people, remember, it's not quantity, it's quality. So having 2 close friends or 20, mediocre friends makes a difference. Knowing your tribe, having a safe place to talk. What we know about trauma is we have to process it, because otherwise we get stuck in our midbrain and we don't get to the prefrontal cortex where we make meaning of things. And this is where conversation and communication are so integral, as well as language. So having people you can share your experiences with and feel safe and to be vulnerable and say, holy shit, that was a tough week of training, or I just went out on a tour, or I went to an emergency response and it was very heavy. It triggered me, reminded me of my own mom, kids, whatever it is, so that you can process that stuff so that it doesn't get stuffed down into the pressure cooker and come exploding out in, a post-traumatic stress injury.
I've read what Nicholas wrote there, and yes, I'm happy we're listening there, Nicholas. Jen was speaking to many of the pieces that will be helpful for you in shifting the narratives. Like as you were explaining in that question, you experienced an environment that had a way of being that was embedded in it. There was lots of upregulation, lots of yelling, lots of, negative energy that, became what you were used to. And what's difficult for the human being is we become adaptive even to that negative energy. It's like that is in some just uncomfortable way becomes comfortable. It's, and when you're experiencing it often, but you are feeling the contrast and you are feeling like you want to show up differently for your daughter and as a father. So you've already activated something very important for showing up differently than the experience that you've had. And I think Jen can probably allude even deeper to, the language, the shifting of your narrative as you step into being a father yourself.
Yeah, and one of the things is the comfort in the chaos. So when it's calm and we're down regulated, we're like, holy shit, this is foreign. I don't want to be here. So what happens is your baseline elevates, your normal stress level tolerance elevates. However, when it elevates, it doesn't become better for you to be in that state. It just means now that you're operating at this higher stress rate. And what we do know, there's this suboptimal and then this suboptimal range up here. One is hypoarousal. So you're like down, depressed, unmotivated. And this hyperarousal is super active, chaotic, urgent, knee-jerk living. And what happens is that baseline gets closer to that being your normal, which can be reset with practice. And Nicholas, it all starts with awareness and the desire to want to change, to bring that baseline down to that peak performance zone, that optimal area. And if we were to scale that 0 to 10, it could go 0 to 4 is suboptimal, 5 to 7 is peak, and then 8, 9, 10 is hyperarousal. So finding out how to reset your baseline so you're more often in that peak zone. So knowing your triggers, that's where, community connection, talking, feeling safe to say, oh my God, my daughter's crying and it drives me nuts. To hear another dad or another mom say, that's okay, it's normal. Here, what are we going to do about that? What makes sense for you? What tools, resources do you have to help normalize that? And when you're in a hyperarousal or hypoarousal for a long period of time, research has shown that it's nearly impossible to get into optimal zone on your own, because the limiting beliefs, the patterns, the narrative, the tunnel vision makes us too confined and stuck, and we in our limbic brain can't problem solve. That's where external help can be really beneficial to move you and adjust your baseline. Yeah, and Kayla's saying there on Thursday, we're going to talk about moving from that fear state to power. So changing the energetic vibration of your being for forward momentum, using scale of consciousness as a reference point.
And I want to speak to your last message there, Nicholas. I do want you to have some compassion for self. You're aware, you've realized, you've made that choice within that you don't want to be those ways. You have picked up toxic traits. You've been taught it. You have, so to, I can take it with a grain of salt, calling yourself a piece of shit. You had a human experience that included a lot of toxic energy. And how do you not bond with that? How do you not absorb that? That was what you were exposed to your, entire upbringing. So give yourself some compassion and some forgiveness. I implore you to, anyhow, that's up to you, but that you learned it by sake of exposure. So you're already making the move. You're already making the choice to be different. So I commend you on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Being aware and taking responsibility for our patterns and our behavior takes tremendous courage. And it also requires compassion and self-love. And men especially aren't encouraged to do that. You guys are taught to think your way out of everything. But if your thinking ability is offline because you're in survival mode, it's going to be a hard slog. We're forgetting that you guys are also feeling beings. There's emotions there. So connecting with that and using the emotions to help move you in a direction that you want to go. Just like the rest of our senses, emotions help us understand and make sense of our reality.
And what's the stat? I believe it's any shift. So Nicholas, you choosing differently for your daughter, you making a shift in the way of being that your parents around your upbringing that's going to be very different. I think the number is that it affects 7 generations down the road. So you are making a shift that will affect generations upon generations of your lineage. So that's amazing.
Is it okay if I hop in? I'd like to ask another question if I can have the floor.
Absolutely. Please. Matt, myself, and Kayla are on. We know that we've gone over time slightly. So if people have to hop off, copy the link, click on, book a call. Let's connect and talk more about this. And you can also, we'll email out the video replays to you guys if you do have to jump off. But if you have time and you have more questions, stay on. Let's continue this discussion. Go ahead.
So one of the questions I have is about training and toughening ourselves and knowing where to draw the line, right? And Matt, maybe this might be more, and this is, I pick on Matt because of his background in law enforcement. So as someone who, so I do a lot of, I do martial arts, I do, a lot of physical training. I do training that can be pretty tough on me physically and mentally, outside of work. My work is like a cushy computer job. And there are days when, and I'm not sure if you follow guys like, I don't know, Jocko and guys like Goggins, and they talk about constantly pushing through. Like, if you don't feel like doing something, do it anyways. And I want to know how well that kind of advice applies to that. And the reason why I ask is because there are definitely days when I would come back from training. So for example, I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and there are days when I come back so exhausted where I'm like, I'm glad I went, but I feel like crap, right? Should I have gone that day? Yeah. So.
Well, short of critiquing those, gentlemen that you suggested,
Sure.
who have great podcasts that have massive.
And I have a very high level of respect for them, by the way. I'm just asking like how applicable it is, because I'm not a Navy SEAL, right?
Yeah, and maybe one day you will be. Who knows? But what I'm saying
I think I'm a little old. I'm a little old for that, but we'll see.
Fair. I think that there's something about, having to really, we mentioned it earlier on, attune to self. You can take the energy that is, delivered externally. So yes, Goggins, Jocko, those guys out there, they put out this very, very intense, nose to the ground, no matter what, no matter how hard it is, just keep grinding, keep pushing forward. Now, the problem I see in that is that everyone has a different capacity. Everyone has a different goal. Everyone has a different, mindset. Everyone has a different background, different upbringing, a different narrative that is embedded. So just to say that, you should grind ahead and move forward, no matter what you're experiencing, I don't fully agree with it. I'm not saying I'm right either. I just feel like there's got to be space to feel into self and to pivot if needed. It's not a pivot that's the energy of quitting or failure or giving up. It's that, my body's starting to speak to me. My body's telling me that what I'm doing may not be congruent with, something that I do or don't believe in, or my goals or my values. So establishing those things. What is your goal? Like in the space of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, do you want to compete? Like, what is your goal? I'm not actually asking that, but it's these things to contemplate, or am I just going to the gym and grinding because yes, I get a good workout out of it. But if you say you go home and you feel like shit, now there's a difference between being tired, exhausted from a really intense workout. But if your body's saying, whoa, what the fuck, maybe you're crossing a threshold that you need to reflect on. And it's not quitting, it's about shifting when you're attuning to self and a part of you is speaking. What is it? Taking that moment, again, meditating or journaling or writing, connecting with someone who you trust to share this with. What's coming up? What inside me is telling me that this doesn't feel right. And then you listen to a Goggins, like fuck it, grind. I don't know. I think there's space for that in certain spaces.
Yeah.
But I don't think it applies to everything. I don't anyhow. So that would be my feelings around it.
Right.
I jump in.
Sure. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks. So Wade, definitely come tomorrow because Jen mentioned it in the chat and I'm going to reference it again.
I saw it. Yeah. Thanks,
one of the things that we're going to talk about is about how we're all just mentioning that, like, stress summates within the body. So the body doesn't know the difference between mental, emotional, physical stress. All stress summates and taxes the body. So one thing for you to consider is what we'll be discussing tomorrow are the 6 foundational principles to really reducing your stress load. So when you're looking at that presentation tomorrow, look to see where are your high stressors that could be impacting how you show up when you go to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. You know, like what could be impacting how you're responding to the stressors. And the thing that we know is you either choose your stressors or your stressors choose you. And a lot of times people are unaware of the stressors that they're choosing, that are taxing their body mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, in all those different realms. And so that would be a really good thing for you to consider. And then to self-evaluate, okay, this is where my stressors are coming from. This is what I'm choosing. Is this the load that I want to carry? How can I reduce that load? And then potentially have more energy to do more like workout, working out versus working in. So that's another thing that we talk about, is the difference between working out, strenuous exercise. Working in provides you with energy. So some other ideas to consider.
Yeah, thank you, Kayla. I've also been reading Jen's messages too while listening to Kayla as well. I guess I also want to add that, like, I'm not like, I don't hate training. I mean, I obviously do it because I like it. But I also, and I guess to address one of the things that Jen brought up, and I don't know if this other guys feel this, and by the way, I don't want to take over the floor because I know there's other people here. But I will say that as a guy, in our society, I feel like on one hand, I'm told I have to be docile, I have to be, you have to be agreeable, to the point where it makes people lose respect for me as a guy because we're too agreeable. And I guess, and to address the toughen up part, right? I think stressful training has helped me develop that confidence to really develop that disagreeableness when necessary, right? And thanks, Martin. Don't believe, yeah, I agree. But I do feel like there is this need to toughen up and always, and like kind of to push. And one of the reasons why I am interested in SFE is because I want to find where my breaking point is. I don't know if that's healthy. But I mean, it's something that, I mean, obviously there are things that in my life that I struggle with, but I want to find like what breaks me, I guess. I don't know if that's healthy.
Well,
yeah.
What I want to say to that is fuck the narrative.
Right. I agree.
Challenge it. If it doesn't resonate with you, if you feel yourself grinding to do what Goggin said, or whoever else, if it grinds to do what Matt and Kayla and I are suggesting, don't do it. Challenge it. Hold it out in front of you and say, just because it's always been this way and it's always happened that way doesn't mean it has to keep being that way. It gets us to a certain point, and then, oh, thank you, you've served your purpose narrative or dialogue or resource or human. Now I'm ready for more, and find the place and the people and the tribe and the resources that brings you to more. And it really takes a lot of patience and pause and self-reflection to tune into yourself and say, that doesn't resonate. Toughen up. Well, what does that even mean? What resonates for you? You're your own best expert, but we've taken that away from everybody in our culture by having expert this and expert that. And yes, they're tools, resources, and guides, but also, so are you. You're alive. Do you know how hard it is to survive as a human? To get from day to day to day to day in any meaningful way. Like, we also have to celebrate all our accomplishments to get us to this point and the versions of us that helped us get here. And then say, thank you, I'm ready for something new or different. And like I said earlier, it's difficult for men right now because there's so many narratives being challenged, and you are being pulled in a lot of ways. And we're still operating with those old principles and teachings, to toughen up and be a man and be the alpha, but also be super empathetic and present to your partner and be a good leader and have communication skills. And it's like, but we don't have role models for this. How am I supposed to know all of this? So you guys, in a way, not in a way, you guys are leading that way. So have the conversations, connect with people who are open-minded, find safe spaces to explore, and where you can say, I don't think I want to grind through this. I don't know. Do you think it's healthy if I want to find my limit through the SFE? And not because somebody else will tell you yes or no, but so that you can hear it and start listening to yourself and holding that dialogue out in front and exploring it and answering your own questions with confidence and authenticity.
And
Yeah, no, thank you.
And I think there is an element to, you know, what Goggins doesn't share is the moments that he struggled, you know, like there are,
Yeah,
he's a human. He is a human being who he's had many human experience. Well, he's having a human experience. And, you know, I understand why he doesn't share it, but every human has had a moment of struggle and whatnot. You know, it's like Cesar Millan training dogs. You know, you don't, if you watch the outtakes, I'm sure there'd be moments where, you know, the dog bit him. You know what I mean? So, you know, but for the external projection of what he's trying to sell, that's how he puts it out there. So I'm just saying, you know, feel into it as, you know, as we've been talking about, like there's going to be a physical, like you're going to know within what is right and what is wrong, and that awareness will grow and expand.
Yeah, no, thank you. This has been really helpful because it's, yeah, like this whole thing has kind of been, and I don't know about the other guys in the call, but it's been kind of like eating away at me for a couple of days. I'm like a little nervous about it because it's like, you know, because I mean, again, I read about buds, I read about Hell Week, and I'm like, I want to do it so badly because it's like, you know, because I don't know, I guess I have masochistic tendencies, I guess. I don't know. It's something that I'm drawn to it, but it's also kind of like, okay, now I have to deal with now what are the consequences of going through it? Because we always need to look at the consequences of our actions, right?
Well, I'm a believer, if you're nervous or scared of it, you should be doing it.
Yeah, that's how I felt. Yep.
Yeah, and really changing the narrative. Just because it's uncomfortable or evokes fear doesn't mean it's bad. Doing hard things, expanding our boundaries can be quite rewarding and exhilarating. It's to know the difference between, you know, that push for push sake versus something you actually really want to put yourself in line with.
Mm-hmm.
So, sorry.
Sorry, no, go ahead. I was just going to ask, does anybody else have anything to say? Robert, go ahead.
Yeah, a bit about me. I'm kind of on the polar opposite. I got what I call is kind of like a spiritual AD, ADHD, whatever. Like I hang around with a bunch of spiritual groups, and we did a lot of, like twice a year, I used to get away to a meditation seminar where I actually let all my stress and regressions out, or like just to get my Zen on again. But I've been working construction for over 20 years. I'm a really heavy fit construction worker. So even when I signed up for this, I was like, well, I'm good. My goal is to work on my personal self a little bit more, because like I said, spiritually, there's blocks in your brain you got to hack, and I don't know. So I'm hoping to I still kind of got an idea what's going on, like a physically fit challenge too, or I don't think I skimmed for the website and I signed up, and like I'm getting a lot of useful information on this, and I'm excited. I just
Sorry, I was just writing
Awkward.
something in there. You touched on something, Robert, that I wanted to highlight to the group. When we're looking at well-being, health, wellness, we have to really look at 4 components: physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual aspects. So we can train all day in the gym, but if we're devoid of the other things, we won't feel fulfilled, satisfied, and whole. So thank you for prompting that. Can I ask a clarifying question? What is it that you're wanting to know?
Basically how to hack your brain to get over all the rewire it, pretty much. Like, yeah.
Well, the 1-2 punch for that, I actually see Kayla saying something there. I feel like you might want to jump in, Kayla. Go, do it.
I was going to say it's a practice. It's a continuous practice, right?
Yeah.
Like just as you've been going to those meditation retreats twice a year, right? and you're
Yeah.
practicing it twice a year, it's also practicing it all those other days that you're
You got
outside,
it. You got it.
you know? And it's just as if you go to the gym and you're working those physical muscles, like hacking your brain, that mental, physical, emotional, spiritual state, like that's a daily practice, because we're constantly getting different stressors, different external stimuli that's influencing us. And then we're constantly practicing, okay, I'm going to do breathing and I'm going to see how that works. Okay, that assisted me today, so I'm going to try it tomorrow. No, it didn't work today, so today I'm going to do something different, right? And it's that constant evolution of knowing that ebb and flow of your own life, and how can you work within the boundaries with which you have, and also stretch those boundaries at the exact same
Yeah.
time.
I took the pool cover off the pool. I really want to do that Will Huff Iceman breathing technique. So I got the pool prepped and ready.
Nice.
Hey, there's step one, get prepped to do the thing, right?
Yeah.
And then return to it or let it go if you find out cold plunges aren't your thing right now. That's okay too. That's where self-compassion comes in. You know, we tend to, and especially as men, and I see this in my practice a lot, is the rigidity of it. I've got to do it all or none. It's like, that's not life, and that doesn't feel really good. And I'm going to try this. And if it works, great. I might circle back to it. And that requires cultivating a sense of curiosity and exploration and a little bit of play, because you might jump in that pool and be like, that was dumb. I don't like cold water. Or you might jump in and you might be like, this is great. And you might have a little splash around. So we have to learn to be a little bit more holistic in our approach to things that allows for fluidity and ease, which will help us in creation mode. Creation mode is about this beautiful cultivation chaos. I'm going to try this and I'm going to try that. I'm going to pull this and I'm going to do this. And some of it's going to work and some of it's not. And that's okay. There's no judgment. And that ease and that fluidity will help you shift from survival mode into creation mode, again, making that sense of overall thriving.
Yeah, I find there can be rigid narratives in all spheres, you know, even in all spheres, well-being as well. You know, you must wake up, meditate, journal, you know, do this. I lived that experience of keeping a rigid morning routine where I've tried to make some shifts in it because I was getting stressed when I couldn't do the thing. I'm like, you know, if I ran out of time to journal, I'm like, fuck, it's the thing that's supposed to relax me, where I'm getting stressed over not doing the thing that's relaxing me. So, you know, we can create a rigid narrative even in the wellness sphere, right? You know, and just as the, you know, we've mentioned, just feel into it. What's best for you? What's best for you can be very different than what's best for someone else. Most of the time, like even us as coaches, we're putting out suggestive guiding principles. Doesn't mean it's going to be the thing that works for you. It's worked for many, so that's why we say it. But yeah, there can be rigidity in any sphere.
I find it strange that and I don't mean this in a bad way. I just find it strange because it's never really been done before, but to kind of marry wellness with something like, you know, with like SFE, because I feel like the purpose of all these programs is to basically, I mean, pardon my language, but produce killing machines, right? I mean, that's what a lot of it is. Yet, I mean, the wellness is the way I see it, and this might be cynical, but it's supposed to keep you well enough so that you're stable and functional, right? But to kind of talk about it from a holistic standpoint, and I understand there is a functional use to it, like you have to be creative, like you are placed in situations where you have to be creative, because
and you have to trust yourself, and you have to have confidence, and you have to be able to communicate. Right. And I just want to clarify, like SFE, when you're talking special forces, you're talking JTF outside of this community. Like,
oh yeah. I'm not saying this community is
right. I just wanted to make the distinction because that is a separate kettle of fish. The SFE as a community is very much about holistic health, wellness, spirituality, all of that goodness that makes us happy, healthy, whole humans. And it does translate into that military sphere as well, because they know no matter what the objective, if you're not emotionally, mentally, and physiologically regulated, you're no good out there. You're not good to yourself. You're not good to your crew. You're not good to your country.
Right.
So they know that, and they do really emphasize that.
Mm-hmm. Sorry. Yeah, I didn't. I know that what I might have said came off a little brash. But
No,
it's kind
no,
of
don't,
like-
you don't have to apologize. I just wanted to make the distinction between
Yeah,
the two.
of course, of course. Yeah, I understand the distinction. It's just interesting to hear, like, because no one I know, like, again, I look at a lot of guys who are in special forces. The last thing to talk about is like being kind to yourself. A lot of it is like, it's just, just grind through, bro. Like that is the narrative I get. And I'm sure it's not like that, but that's just the general thing I got.
Yeah, and that's evolving like most narratives for sure. And that's part of wherever you find yourself, become part of that narrative change. Question it. Like, is this really what we are? Or can we grow and expand that? And not be afraid to step into courage and ask those questions. There was a question here or a comment here. That's exactly what I find myself in. A lot of times I overload my to-do list. So there's a really cool practice to scale your energy. Everything you do on that to-do list is going to cost you some energy. So figure out a scaling system, like going to the gym, that might be two bits of energy. Having a deep conversation with your partner, that's 5 because they might be chatty. So you figure out the energy requirements of the things you do in your day and set your day up, your to-do list, so that you always have at least 3 extra points of wiggle room. So you don't fill your plate with 0 to 10 energy requirements. You go 0 to 6, 0 to 7 energy requirement, so that you have this wiggle room for emergencies, things going, sideways, but also this beautiful energy reserve so you can still participate in life and not just be doing. So that can help with the overloaded to-do lists and that urgency. And that can come with a lot of pressure we put on ourselves about external expectations and validations and like having to produce. As men, you have to do, you produce. That's what, the narrative is. No, you don't. And you get to change that. And you get to change your metrics of accomplishment and success.
I read something not too long ago. Actually, I just brought it up again. Taking time to not create is also a part of creating. Speaks to stillness, speaks to the importance of pausing, having time to be still.
Yeah, and in a toxic hustle culture, we struggle with that. We have this overarching need to produce and excel and achieve, and we forget that also means stillness and beingness and oneness and connection, not just on those productive metrics. Gentlemen, I see the time. I feel like we could sit here and chat for a good long while, and I would love to, but I gotta bounce. I got some responsibilities with little humans to care for. If you want to chat more, click the link in the chat box, book a call, let's talk, let's connect, let's see how we can support you from survival mode to creation mode so you can have more sense of thriving throughout your lifetime. And tune in tomorrow and Thursday, and there's lots more discussion to be had, lots more nuggets we want to share with you guys. So thank you for sharing, showing up your attention. We hope to see you tomorrow and Thursday.
Take care, guys.
Thank you so
Thanks
much.
for
Thank
coming,
you so
guys.
much.
Thank you
You're
very much.
welcome. Be well.